and the Todd Family YouTube video, whatever you may be doing. Thank you so much, Brandon, and the Todd Family, part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. If you jump on here live on this Sunday evening, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Like, a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, tell your family about the channel. Make sure to share the video on all social media platforms, and also make sure to click that bell so you'll be notified whenever we go live. But tonight I want to run down quickly a few predictions for the college football season. Good evening, Kevron. Glad to have you here. As always, not my personal predictions, just some predictions I found as far as who they predict to win the Power Four conference when college football starts in about a week and a half, with the Furman and Anderson game coming up on Thursday, August 27th. Hey there, Marcus. Glad to have you here, as always, and it was good talking to you the other day, Marcus. Maybe I'll see you again somewhere down the road. But now, I didn't write down every single outlet. I mean, between all the podcasts and all the writers and all the websites and all the TV networks, you could have 50 different people and companies and brands giving you predictions. That's too many. But I figured we'd do the big three, in my opinion anyway, the big three, and that's CBS, ESPN, and Yahoo Sports. Just their predictions on who's going to win each conference of the Power Four conferences. I might do the other conferences or FCS sometime before the starts. Don't know, but just curious on what would be your prediction on the winner of all four of the Power conferences. For the most part, with a couple of exceptions, they all three have the same teams winning each conference. ESPN has Miami out of the ACC, Ohio State out of the Big Ten, Texas Tech out of the Big 12, and Georgia out of the SEC. CBS has Miami out of the ACC, Ohio State out of the Big Ten, Texas Tech out of the Big 12, and Texas out of the SEC. And Yahoo Sports has Miami out of the ACC, Oregon out of the Big Ten, Texas Tech out of the Big 12, and Texas out of the SEC. So as you see, they all three have Miami winning the ACC, and they all three have Texas Tech winning the Big 12. And then you have two that have Ohio State winning the Big 10, and one that has Oregon winning the Big 10. And then you have two that have Texas winning the SEC, and one that has Georgia winning the SEC. So you could do Lindy's and Athlon and Fox and NBC and whichever other one you want to use, and more than likely every one of them is going to have a combination of those teams. I think every one of them is going to have Miami, and every one of them is going to have Texas Tech. The Big Ten and the SEC, you'll have Ohio State, Oregon, and then you might have one or two that say Indiana. The SEC, it's going to be Georgia and Texas, and then you'll probably have somebody somewhere down the line that's going to say either LSU shocks the world with Lane Kiffin, or there'll be some that are still Bama homers that pick Bama. For the most part, it's going to be Georgia or Texas, Oregon or Ohio State, and then Miami and Texas Tech. So really no reason to run down every single one, because they're all going to have the same teams. And I wish for once we would have somebody go out on a limb and just pick off the wall teams. It's never going to happen because everybody wants to be right. And, if you go out and say, well, I'm going to pick California to win the ACC, and I'm going to pick Rutgers to win the Big Ten, and I'm going to pick Iowa State to win the Big 12, and I'm going to pick Vanderbilt to win the SEC, you're going to be all four wrong. And nobody wants to have one wrong, let alone all four wrong. But it's just boring and chalky every year when it's the same teams in the conferences every year. Marcus says, do you think Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson will be back in the top five? Well, Georgia's always going to be a top five. Hey there, I'll say A1. Glad to have you here. Georgia's always going to be top five. Georgia's one of those teams, Marcus, they could go 0-12 one year, and they're going to come out the next year in the top five. Georgia's always going to be top five, and they're top five this year. And I think Georgia has a really good team, and I think Gunnar Stockton's a great quarterback, but I don't know if he's an elite quarterback. I think he's good enough to get Georgia to the playoffs and maybe even win a playoff game or two, but I don't know if he's good enough to win the whole thing. I just don't know if he's consistent enough with the deep ball. And for whatever reason, I don't know the reason, but for whatever reason, Georgia only has trouble recruiting one position year after year, and that's wide receiver. I don't know why, but if Georgia has a receiver do anything, it's always somebody from the transfer portal. As far as recruiting, they can recruit every spot on the field but a receiver. I don't know why, but you look at Georgia's receiver room year after year, and it's always just blah. It's not there. Alabama is not a top five team. Some folks have them going 10-2. I don't see it. I think they're an 8-win team, maybe. I think they're going to consistently go backwards as long as Kalen DeBoer is their coach. I think Kalen DeBoer is a phenomenal coach. I just don't think he's meant to beat Alabama. The reason is it's just not a fit. So I think by the end of this year, next year, he'll be gone from there. But I think he'll go somewhere else and he'll win. It's just for some reason DeBoer and Alabama is just not a good fit. And I think Clemson will be back in the top 20 this year, but not any higher. Possibly top 15, but they're not a top 5 or top 10 team yet. But I do think they'll be better this year than they were last year. But as long as Dabo's their coach, which I think he'll be the coach for at least 5, 6, 7 more years, maybe 10 more years. But as long as Dabo's coach, they're always going to be a good team. They may not be a top 5 team every year, but they're not going to go out there under Dabo and have years like last year. Last year was an anomaly. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows the reason, because they had talent last year. I mean, they had 9 players drafted in the NFL draft, and you can't have 9 players drafted on your team if you don't have talent. So obviously the team had talent last year. Just for whatever reason on the field, it just didn't work. It just didn't have any good luck at all for whatever reason. It was one of those years where it seemed like everything that could go against you did go against you. But when you have 9 players drafted, obviously you still have talent. And Luke, if you're going to come on here and say stupid stuff, you can go watch somebody else's channel. I don't have time for that nonsense. I'm not 12, and I'm not going to respond to stupid comments like that. You need to go watch a middle school channel, somebody that might go back and forth with you, because I'm not going to. But I do think Clemson will get better this year. I also think another thing that hurt them last year, Marcus, was for whatever reason, the team just didn't like Cade Klubnik. I don't know why. I always thought personally that Cade was extremely overrated. I always thought that he would have 4 or 5 of the best plays you've ever seen, and then all of a sudden he'd make a play you'd see a 12-year-old make, and then you'd be like, what is this guy doing? You know, he is a senior making, freshman mistakes. He just never got better. He never got past the childish moments. he would have a 3rd and 2, and instead of throwing the ball away, he'd run backwards 15 yards. And those are things you're taught not to do in 6th grade, and Cade never got past that. But that's just an outsider looking in. But you can just watch Clemson on TV and just watch the team play when Cade's in the game, and then watch how they play when Cade's out of the game. And the whole team on both sides of the ball just looked completely different when Cade didn't play. For whatever reason, they just didn't like Cade Klubnik. So I think Cade being gone in itself is going to make them better. But I also think the team is going to gel better this year. But I don't think they're going to be no top 10 team. But I could see them going 9-3. But that's a whole lot better than last year. But I think they're a minimum of 10-2 because LSU is a loss and Miami's a loss. So they'll have to win every other game to go 10-2. There's no way I see LSU or Miami. So they're a minimum of 10-2, but I think they'll lose at least one more somewhere on the schedule, whether it's California or Virginia Tech or South Carolina, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. I just don't see them losing to just LSU and just Miami. They'll lose at least one more somewhere. But LSU's a loss and Miami is a loss. And they're always going to change the rules, Marcus, and I wish they wouldn't. And, you know, my wife always says that she thinks out of all the sports that football is the hardest to watch because it seems like every single thing you do is wrong. She said there's a flag on every play. And, of course, you know, my 8-year-old twins, all they care about is wrestling, so they don't care anything about football at all. And my daughter don't care about football, you know, at all. But, you know, some kids do watch it, but football does have a lot of rules, and I wish it didn't because they do make it more complicated than what it should be. And they do change rules every year, and I've said for years that, you know, college football now is pretty much the NFL minor leagues. So every time the NFL changes a rule, college football is going to change that same rule because they pretty much have the same rules in play that the NFL does so that you can get used to it in college. So by the time the NFL comes around, you're used to it. The only rule right now that the NFL has that college football don't have is the kickoff rule. And I hope to God college football doesn't get that because that rule almost makes the NFL unwatchable. I know it's just kickoffs, but kickoffs are part of the game. And you can't watch a game and then turn it off when there's a kickoff. But that whole kickoff rule and onside kick rule is about the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I hate it because they claim it's trying to stop injuries, but it don't matter what you do. It's football. People are going to get hurt. If you're changing rules to protect the players, stop playing the game. Because no matter what you do, people are going to get hurt. It's a contact sport. It happens. But if you follow not just sports, but life in general, most of the time, people get hurt doing these simple things. So you're probably more likely to be hurt sitting on the sidelines doing nothing than you are on the field. I mean, there was a baseball player a few years back, I forget his name right now, but a few years back there was a baseball player that got hurt unloading groceries and walking from his car to his house. Because when you're doing simple stuff like that, you're not thinking about an injury. You're not thinking about getting hurt. So you're more than likely, you know, going to step in a pothole or have one foot off the sidewalk and one foot on the sidewalk or walk crooked because you're not thinking. When you're on the field in a contact sport, you're expecting contact. But they keep changing these rules, and the excuse is always, well, it's for the safety of the players. Well, just stop playing the game then, because you can't have a contact sport without people getting injured. And it shows you that it's all about, you know, the mental part, because rugby is rougher than football, and rugby's non-stop contact, and they don't wear pads, and there's very, very rarely a serious injury in rugby. Now, granted, you're going to get a broken nose or a busted nose because you're out there hitting somebody and getting hit full speed with no pads. But as far as like ACLs and hamstrings and, MCLs and PCLs and all that, you just don't see it in rugby. And they make way more contact than football does, nonstop without pads, and they don't have it. If I had to make my prediction, I would pick Miami in the ACC, Oregon in the Big Ten, Texas Tech in the Big 12, and Texas out of the SEC. And the only reason I pick Oregon is because when I look at Oregon, I say, for Oregon, if not this year, when? Because we know Oregon is a top 5 team year in, year out. If not top 5, at least top 10. They always have awesome, great talent. But no matter who the coach is, they're top 5, top 10 every year. They either made the BCS back in the day and now make the playoffs, and then they fizzle out. They've never won a national championship. They've made it there and gotten beat, but they've never won one. But I think Ohio State has the best quarterback wide receiver combo this year in the country. But I don't know if I trust Ohio State outside of that. To me, their running game is not going to be as good this year, and I don't think their defense is going to be as good this year. So, yeah, they had the best quarterback wide receiver combo in the country, but I don't know if that's good enough. But I look at Oregon and say, I think you're actually better than Ohio State this year. And, Utah is always good, but of course, they're in the Big 12. But just looking at the Big 10, Michigan has a new coach. How good are they going to be? We don't know. Indiana is still going to be really good, but can Indiana win the Big 10 another year? Especially with, almost a whole new team as far as, the starters go. You got a brand new quarterback as well. And then you look around the league and you say, this is Oregon's year to shine. And if they can't win it this year and win the national title this year, I just don't know if they can. With Michigan taking a step back, and I think Indiana takes a small step back, I think they'll still be a top 15 team. But I don't think they can, contend for a national championship again. So to me, if Oregon can't get it done this year, they're just not going to get it done. Hey there, Cardona. Glad to have you here. Any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. And just like the experts, I don't want to come on here and say, well, I'm going to pick Duke in the ACC, and I'm going to pick Rutgers in the Big 10, and I'm going to pick Kansas in the Big 12 because I want to be right too. But granted, there's probably going to be one of those teams that's predicted to win their conference that's not going to be any good because it happens almost every year. But I don't think it'll be Miami because Miami might be better this year than they were last year. And last year they made it all the way to the national title game. But Miami is really, really, really good. And I know Texas Tech lost their quarterback, but I still think they're good enough to where that's not going to affect them until playoff time. And Texas was picked to win the SEC by most folks last year. And then they come out of the gate and, they lost the game to the Buckeyes. But as the year progressed, they struggled with Kentucky and Florida. But then come about Halloween time on, Texas really turned the corner and got better. And since they got better last year, as the year went on, and now Manning is back for another year, and now your wide receiver room's gotten better, and now your running back room's gotten better, it's hard to see Texas not finish 1 or 2 in the SEC. But according to previous year's stats, they'll be one of these teams that's supposed to be really good that's not. Happens all the time. Every year when the polls come out, there's always one team, sometimes 2, but always at least one team that comes out and they're top 5 and they go 7-5. They're top 10 and they go 6-6. Happens every year. And then there's one team that you think, oh, this team's lucky to win 6 games, and they'll go 9-3. Happens every year. It'll happen again this year. Who it'll be, I don't know, but it will happen. But let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. I'm really getting into the music of singer and songwriter Colin Hay. You call it hay fever. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. And family, how much you love them.